So I've got a single image selected that I want to export. So now I choose File, Export, and my big, humongous Export One File dialog box comes up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a preset, and I'm going to use this for Facebook, social media. So I'm going to export it to the hard drive. I can also export to email, CD, or a DVD, but in this case, I'm going to export it to the hard drive. And when I create a preset, I like to choose my folder at the time I export it. So I'm going to choose folder later. I can also export it to the desktop, to a specific folder, so on and so forth. But this is great for a preset. Choose folder later. That means you choose the folder when you export it. Existing files, ask what to do. Now this is important if you export to the same folder. Say for example, you've got a TIFF file and you're exporting it as a TIFF file and you did some editing on it. If you don't change the name and you export it to the same folder, it's going to ask you what to do, which is important so you don't overwrite your original file. Rename to, file naming, rename to. I almost always rename it, and I'm going to choose custom name and a sequence. And I can create any name that I want here, so I'm just going to choose Facebook. And I can modify this at the time of the export. And actually, I'm going to put the date, today's date on there. I'm going to put underscore 06/22/17, second day of summer. I'm not exporting video, so I don't have to do anything there. Now, my file settings. I've got a number of different file settings. I can export it as a JPEG, which for the web is perfect, a Photoshop document, a TIFF, a digital negative, or I can export it in the original file format. Now, original, you're taking a chance again. If you export it to the same folder, you can overwrite something. In this case, I'm choosing JPEG for the web. Color space, sRGB is perfect for the web. Now, if I'm exporting it for use in something like Photoshop or an application that will support it, I can export with the Adobe RGB color space or the ProPhoto RGB color space, which has much more gamut and a lot more colors available. But unless you're exporting it to a program that will support this, choose sRGB. You can also limit the file size, which is beneficial if you're sending it up to some place where they will not accept a huge file size. You can click this checkbox and then just type in the upper limit of the file size. Resize to. I pretty much always use width and height. I can put specific dimensions in. I can size it to the long edge of the image, which is beneficial when you need the long edge in a portrait or landscape photo to be specific dimensions. I can export it to megapixels. I can also export it to percentage. Now with percentage, be careful. You don't want to enlarge it, and you have a don't enlarge option here. Now for social media, 1,000 by 1,000 pixels is perfect. Facebook is going to step on it anyway, and they're going to resize it to what they prefer. So I start with 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, and it'll put it in a box that's 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. In other words, if this image is wider than it is tall, so it will be 1,000 pixels wide. If the image was shot when I rotated the camera 90 degrees and the image was taller than it was wide, it would export it to 1,000 pixels high. Resolution for the web, 72 pixels per inch is all you need. Sharpen. You can sharpen for screen if you're exporting it for a printer, matte paper, or glossy paper. In this case, I'm going to choose screen, and I'm going to use standard, because if I go high, it may look a little crunchy. I can choose low, and it might not be that sharp. So standard works out about perfect. Metadata. Include all metadata. Notice you have an option to remove person info. In other words, if you added keywords with a person's name or address in it, or if your camera has GPS on it and records GPS data on it, you can also remove the location info. Well, my camera doesn't have GPS on it, so I don't worry about that. I can choose all metadata, all except camera and camera raw info, copyright and contact info only, or copyright only. And for this preset, I'm going to choose copyright only. And notice remove person info and location info is already removed because it's not in there. Next, my watermark. I can choose any one of the watermarks, and this is the social media watermark, is the one I created in the last lesson. And now, after export, do nothing. I could show it in the Finder. I can open it in Adobe Photoshop or open it in a different application. I'm going to choose do nothing. And now I'm going to save this as a preset. So if I click Add, the folder it will go into is User Presets, because that's what Lightroom sets up as a default. And I'm going to call this Doug's Social Media 2017 and click Create. And there it is as an option on User Presets, and click Export. And now I'm going to export this to my desktop, which is squeaky clean. And now Lightroom's exported the file. And there's the exported file in Photoshop. And I'm ready to rock and roll and upload it to Facebook or other social media. So there you have it, creating an export preset in Lightroom.